Welcome back everybody, and in this video we are continuing to look at handling variables in Java, and in this video we are going to start looking at a data type called string. So just before we get started, just a few things about strings that might be useful for you going forward. So just to know that strings are a type of data that allow you to store any combinations of text and characters. So any text and characters, including the character representation of numbers, okay, which we'll come to a little bit later on. So they're ideal for storing things like somebody's name, their surname, maybe a street address, something like that. Possibly anything with it includes a combination of text and numbers. So something like a vehicle registration plate, somebody's postcode or zip code, or something like that. Now you can store numbers in a string, but it's not an actual number. What you're actually storing in the string is the character representation of that number. So that means that you can't perform any maths as such on data that's stored in a string. Okay, and we'll come to that. So a string as well is actually a special type of data type. It's actually considered a class. Yeah, we'll be doing a little bit of work with strings. In this video, we'll be talking about strings and also something called a string literal. Now, if you've been following this series of videos, we've actually come across string literals before. Our very first video that included printing out the hello world message to the console actually included a string literal, but we'll come to that in a moment. And when it comes to strings and string literals, as the programmer, we have to decide when best to store data as a string in a variable or to just use the string literal, which we'll talk about in a moment. So first of all, just to recap on that string literal that we mentioned earlier on. So if we had a simple System.out.println, okay, and if we said hello world, okay, so if we sent that message to the console, and if we were to run this this little program and just observe what happens in the console, we should hopefully get our results. Okay, so this is just sending a little message, a little string to the console, hello world. Okay, so what we've actually done here is we've sent a string literal to the console. This is a string here, just of the characters hello world. Okay, now what we could have done, okay, is we could have actually stored the text hello world as a string variable. Okay, and to do that, we could have just set up or declared a string variable, and so the format of that is just the word string, okay, with a capital S, string, and then we could have called the variable greeting. Okay, greeting, something like that. Okay, and we could have assigned the variable greeting, okay, the string greeting with the value hello world. Actually, I'm going to say hello from a string variable. Okay, we'll just change that around a little bit. Okay, and so we're not going to send the string variable to the console anymore. We're actually going to send the greeting. So we're going to send the variable called greeting that contains the string hello from a string variable. Okay, and if we run this, we should get the text hello from the variable, and that could have just as easily have said hello world. We could have stored the string hello world in the string called greeting, and we've printed that back out to the console. Okay, so yeah, so we've got a string there. So string, and then the name of what you want to call your variable, and then just the same, you can the assignment operator, okay, to assign the string hello world to the variable. Okay, and when we're assigning strings to the variable, we need the double quotation marks just around your string, and of course you can send numbers. Okay, you can send the character representation of numbers, and you can store those in the string, or just really any combination of characters. Strings can contain text, special characters, numbers, and so on. Okay, so let's have a look at putting together just some of the things that we've been learning about just in the last few videos. So suppose we had an application that maybe stored somebody's name, say for example their name, the string first name, maybe their surname. Okay, maybe their street address. Their town, and their postcode. Okay, so we're saving this information about, say for example, a person. Now we're using a string to store the first name because that is usually, a string, usually text. Also the surname, just using just normal text to store a person's surname. Street address is usually text as well. A string to store the person's town, and also a string to store the postcode. Strings are quite good for postcodes and zip codes because you can use them for storing combinations of text and characters. You're not likely to need to perform any maths on a postcode as such, so string is probably a good choice. One thing that you might not use a string for could be the person's street number or their house number. So obviously, depending on where you live in the world, there might be different formats of storing this. But so if somebody lived at 7 Park Street, you might store the 7 as an integer. So you could do that if you wanted. Just depends on what you wanted to do. And so you could start to assign some values to these variables. So the first person could be, let's say, just making up a name, Connor. We'll go with, right, we'll go for a Scottish name. Okay, and they might live at number 7. Okay, their house number might be number 7. So we need to assign the value 7 to the integer. So you can mix and match what types of variables you want to use. Their street address might be Park Street. Okay, and so for the town could be Glasgow. And the postcode, just going to make up a random postcode that sounds like a Glasgow postcode. Okay, right, so we've assigned a couple of strings, and you can see the way that IntelliJ actually, or your IDE actually, will actually color code the data that you're storing in these variables. Okay, so you can see there's quite a difference between the color scheme for the strings, which are appearing on my setup as green, and just storing the house number there, which doesn't require the quotation marks, just storing that as an integer. If the person lived in a flat, you could no longer store that as a integer. So if they lived in a block of flats, you're going to have run into some issues there. So integer might not be the best data type for the house number, but not to worry for now. Street address, Glasgow, and postcode. So string is ideal for postcode. So let's print those back out to the console. So let's just do a system out, as always. And we'll say your name is, okay, and we can concatenate the person's first name, okay, which just means we include it in the output. That's the surname I used there. You could have used last name. So your name is first name and then the last name, and you could say something like you live at, and then you can actually provide the person's postcodes or postal address. So you could say house number, and maybe their street. Okay, and if you wanted to put the house number and street in one line, and then the other details on another line. Okay. Okay, so something like this. Okay, so we're storing the values into the corresponding variables, and we're just going to print those back out to the console. So let's have a look just to see what results we get here if we run this this program. Okay, so your name is Connor MacPherson, and you live at 7 Park Street, Glasgow, G12 45W. Okay, so yeah, so that's just a little bit about strings. Just practice with them, use them. Just wee things to watch out for, just the way that you store the data there. The syntax just includes quotation marks around the data that you want to store. You can store text and numbers just like the postcode. You can't generally perform maths on strings, on data stored in strings. And you can decide whether you want to use a string or a string literal. Probably best to use a string if you know the data is liable to change at all. If the string is going to be exactly the same during the program and it's not going to change, you could use a string literal. If you think the data is going to change, just use just store it in a string variable. But yeah, so have a practice with strings. Hope this video was useful. Thanks for watching, and take care, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. Bye for now.